The Project Pegasus Part 4 takes place in Marvel 2-in-1 issue 56. The story opens with Thundra preparing to rip the cap off of an emergency exit to Project Pegasus. As they descend, Thundra recalls her recent defeat in the ring. We're then given the backstory as to what happened after Thundra passed out in the ring. Thundra woke up in the locker room, where we once again see the cigar-smoking man that has been pulling the strings on the chaos surrounding Project Pegasus. The mysterious Nth Command. He tells Thundra that he works for an immense organization that is tied into all areas of government and international finance. The individual claims to have arranged her meeting with Herkimer J. Oglethorpe without his knowledge. The organization needed somebody with the strength and courage to perform a risky task. I doubt Thundra would have taken him up on his request, no matter the task, but he ends up playing to her sympathies by teaming her up with 4 other women who each have their own abilities. The Grapplers consist of Titania, Screaming Mimi, Pound Cakes, and Letha. The task seemed easy enough. All they had to do was drop off a device at a prescribed location and leave. Against her better judgment, Thundra agreed once the shadowy man promised her a reward she couldn't pass up. The only resistance the women run into on their way into the facility is a small maintenance crew working to repair the damage done to the nuclear reactor from the previous issue. They are taken out without incident, and the ladies quickly continue towards the pit. The job is finished within minutes. Easy in, easy out. If only it were that simple. The rest of the Grapplers take off, telling Thundra that they have been giving additional orders she wasn't told about. Ben has decided to check in on Wundarr again, and is disappointed to find that his condition is yet to show any signs of improvement, and decides to fill Wundarr in on recent events. Ben tells him that after fighting Nuklo, he realized how alike the two are, and it made him think back on the things that had happened. Ben apologizes for letting the Project Pegasus scientist experiment on Wundarr. Finally, Ben turns around and leaves in order to stop himself from bursting into tears. After Ben leaves, Wundarr begins to stir for the first time in months. He lifts himself off the table to tell Ben he understands. These few words mark a change in Wundarr. He no longer has the childlike speech patterns we are used to seeing with his character, and he refers to the thing as Ben instead of Unca Benji. Once again, the thing is aimlessly wandering the halls when he runs across yet another intruder. Thundra and the thing have fought both with and against each other before. In fact, due to Ben's prowess in battle, Thundra had previously wanted to mate with Ben, but was rejected because the thing was already in love with Alicia Masters. Thundra momentarily tries to avoid any conflict, but the thing insists that he has a job to do, which leads to a brawl between the two. The story switches over to Quasar and Giant Man, who are cleaning up the mess from Nuklo's escape. Dr. Foster is thanking Quasar for pushing through a secondary security clearance so that he can keep his 2 identities separate at work. Their conversation is interrupted by alarms going off all across Project Pegasus. As the two split up to investigate different areas, Giant Man is upset that all of these interruptions are slowing down his radiation research. Quasar walks in on Letha and Screaming Mimi tearing apart a wall in front of an open fire. Can't imagine what these two are trying to accomplish. Letha goes on the offense and successfully tosses Quasar into the nearest wall. We're once again shown an opportunity where Quasar could have easily defeated his foes with containment, but instead goes on the offense. To make matters worse, he doesn't follow through on the attack because they are women. Mimi uses her enhanced vocal cords to warp Quasar's perception of the world. He seems unaware of where the attack is coming from, and Letha is unaffected by having her ears plugged. Quasar is afraid what might happen if he loses control of his energy bands and desperately lashes out before things go too far. The light cage he forms around his 2 foes seems to do little good, and the horror continues to rain down upon him. Quasar's will explodes with a sense of purpose, which leads him to release waves of quasi-stellar energy. The two are stunned by the outburst of energy and fall to the ground. Once again, Quasar is afraid that he's used his energy bands to kill somebody, but takes relief in finding them still alive. It's odd that Quasar uses the expression "thank heaven" in the lower panel, because we will later discover that Wendell Vaughn is an atheist, but it might be that he is just using an expression, or he hasn't settled into his atheism at this point. He also shows extreme dedication to Project Pegasus, calling it his world and his life. Giant Man is caught up with the remaining 2 Grapplers who, like the first 2, seem to be tearing things up with no rhyme or reason. Titania asks if Giant Man is Bobo Brazil's older brother. This was actually sort of a dated reference at the time, and wow, it is extremely dated now. Bobo Brazil was a wrestler in the 1950s to the 1960s who helped break down the racial barriers of wrestling and made history by becoming the first African American to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Giant Man doesn't seem to share Quasar's desire to hold back merely because his foes are women. Pound Cakes hits him in the stomach with a large metal pole. This is followed by a rare crotch shot joke in Marvel as Titania alludes to the fact that Pound Cakes should have hit him in the nuts. I can't believe that this joke made it past the comics code, as I feel pretty certain that if the roles/genders had been reversed, it wouldn't have been allowed into the pages of Marvel. Giant Man evades death by growing and pushing himself up against the walls of the vapor tube. He pulls himself out and is given a blast to the face by Titania. The wrestlers take him to the mat and decide to make a contest out of pulling his arms out of his socket. Giant Man knows he can't last much longer. He raises his arm and smashes his foes together, ending the battle. Thundra and Ben continue to battle it out, but initially neither one of them seems committed to the battle, and both seem to be fighting out of a sense of duty. As the battle rages on, though, Thundra berates Ben for spurning her sexual advances. Like a spoiled teenager, Thundra decides that if she can't have Ben, it might be better if nobody can. The Thing struggles as Thundra attempts to break his neck. It turns out that her trash-talking about Alicia has gotten Ben fed up. He smashes her face with a fistful of metal and tries to explain to her that there's more to love than a set of matching muscles. The two continue to fight and trade insults until both are suddenly interrupted. Quasar, Giant Man, and several Project Pegasus guards have arrived with the captured Grapplers. Ben wants to know what's going on, but Thundra hides her and the Grapplers' true intentions by telling Ben that she's pledged to silence. Meanwhile, a dastardly Dr. Lightner uses the materials dropped off by Thundra to complete the nth projector. It's a minor detail, but earlier in the series the device was called the nth projection. But the nth projector sounds much better. Operations Berserker and Expurgate have been a success, and within the next few hours Dr. Lightner will be able to report to his bosses that their goals are within reach, and that by the end of the day Project Pegasus will be destroyed. That wraps up another chapter. Stick around for the next episode, when Wundarr finally returns. Feel free to hit any of the buttons below. I'm out.